Right, once again, good afternoon everybody. For those who weren't here at my last briefing, last Friday, Peter Harvey is my name. I'm the Assistant Commissioner in charge of Crime Service and responsible for the task force under Operation Protect. I had committed last week to taking unusual steps of giving an update during the course of the investigation. One of the main reasons for that is, of course, the high public interest in what's happening and the impact that has occurred as a result of actions previously. So I think in order to commit to that, we'd arrange today's meeting, so thanks for making time. What I can say is still to do with an operational matter, so there'll be certain questions that I certainly can't answer. I'll endeavour to take your questions and at least take them on board, and if they can't be answered now, I'll certainly give them consideration for later. But I do understand your desire for information, so, but also to be balanced with what is an ongoing investigation. So I can confirm that in the last several days, the investigators from the task force have been very active. We have conducted the analysis of more than 400 hours of closed circuit TV. That has been quite an arduous task for up to 36 officers in total, but it is complete. I've also had the seizure of mobile phones, a laptop and a hard drive directly related to the person of interest who is in quarantine. The person has also been spoken to by detectives from the task force, and I am pleased at this stage to say that from what I have seen, he has been cooperative and that has been helpful. That doesn't mean the investigation is by any means complete, as the person stays in quarantine, as do two other key people we need to speak with to the same level of detail. So the actual process of interviewing both the person in quarantine and two others is that the officers involved certainly have to abide by the health advice as to their own safety. So I expect this will continue for at least several more days, where I'll then be able to make a full assessment on the advice provided me from the investigative team. Now I reach a decision in some form, I think in the very near future, because we have the benefit of working directly with the Director of Public Prosecution, and that's a great advantage. So there's very great level of independence and oversight on the decisions we make. I think this is appropriate, and I welcome that assistance. We don't have any at this stage, any outstanding matters with regard to resourcing or lines of inquiry that I think are too difficult for us, and so we'll progress at a fairly timely rate. We will be, during the investigation, when we do come across names or identify people, we're working very hard to then pass those names across also to the contact tracing side of the fence. So the real important obligation of contact tracing and keeping South Australia safe from any potential spread further of the virus. So there's a real partnership here with health. That's important. The investigation, therefore, from a criminal sense, is simply not in isolation of the greater need to keep the state safe. So I'll throw it to some questions and I'll round off at the end and provide you with an update in written form to reflect on, depending what your focus is from the questions. So
the two people that you're still waiting to speak with that are in hotel quarantine, are they the owners of the shop? What is their position in regards to the pizza shop?
So I'll say that the two people that we're still wanting to speak to are certainly related to the pizza shop, but the exact role I'm not going to comment on today. They are certainly working with solicitors. They are seeking legal advice and legal representation before we speak to them further, which is their right, and that's appropriate.
Can you give us any idea of the nature of the investigation? So is this obviously trying to work out why the lie was told and that sort of thing, but are there other matters, are there criminal matters going on that you're investigating? Can you give us any feel for what you're looking at? Okay, so the task force is formed for the purpose of looking at acts or admissions that may or may not have amounted to a lie, that may have then influenced decisions made in the state. I will say we absolutely need to make this clear. There's no presumption here of guilt. We're looking at all the facts and all the legislation, and based on that very fair and honest assessment, then we'll see if there's a charge to be laid. If
in the course of our investigation we didn't get or discover other matters, I certainly wouldn't comment because that has got nothing to do with this inquiry. So I won't make any comment about any other matters that may or may not be being looked at.
Are the people of interest in hotel quarantine rather than home quarantine because they're considered flight risks, so you can keep an eye on them?
The quarantine system is purely a health-related framework. It has nothing to do with flight risk, has nothing to do with the police retaining oversight of people. It's certainly for solely and wholly for health. It just so happens that the word quarantine is used. Again, for the safety of us all.
Can you just clarify how many people are involved? You said that there was 20 detectives on Friday, but then you said there were 36 officers reviewing their footage. So how many in total?
So it's very fluid. I started off with 20 detectives and they are some of my best detectives from across crime service, as I said, from all the fields that we specialise in, from major crime, public protection and our serious organised crime branch and our financial areas. And so from that group I have the capacity to surge or pull back depending on what the work demand is. On the weekend, for example, there was a need to look at 400 hours of videotape, so we pulled extra people in. They release now back to other work, as I would expect some of the investigators will be from the main task force reasonably soon. So it's an ebb and flow depending on what the risks are and what the tasks are.
It seems like quite a lot of personnel though for someone that simply lied about their work in a pizza bar. How do you justify the staffing cost?
Well, justify it because it's necessary. The cost is what the police do, and justify it by you all being here. If you've never seen anything more focus in my life, and so to have 20 is absolutely appropriate. If I need more, I do that as well. So it's not an issue to me. These people investigate murders, kidnappings, serious crime, organised crime. They're the best. And that's why they're there. And I will draw on them or release them accordingly. So it's not even an issue.
Is there a resourcing cost for this task force?
Yes.
How much is it?
Well, we'll look at it at the end, but it's police. It's still just a police role. So where they're doing, instead of looking right, they're looking left at this. They just come to work. So it's just standard business for us.
Can you tell us where the 400 plus hours of CCTV has been pulled from?
So it's from one of the quarantine locations, and it's at Peppers.
When you're putting together the pieces of the puzzle, is there a connection with the 36-year-old man who's in quarantine and the cleaner in the original Peppers Hotel that contracted the virus?
So it's important that all links are looked at, one from the criminal side of it if there's going to be anything, but more importantly, and from the contact tracing side so we can pass information across. We're not looking down at Mount Gambier. We know where we're looking. So it's pretty well focused. We know who and what we're looking at, and if we do by some chance come across an extra name that is pushed across to contact tracing, it may be nothing to do with anything criminal, but for health.
But in health, in the sense of health, is there a connection between the cleaner and this 36-year-old man? Can you link that back? Has that link been made already?
It's not something I'll comment just today, but I'll take that with you further because I know you'll want that probably in the next day or two. I'll get together again.
Professor Spurrier, she has said a few days ago that all of the information that people provide to contact tracers is completely confidential, and now we've seen this massive task force established that is looking at potentially criminal lines of inquiry. Don't you think, or are you nervous that this task force may actually prevent people from telling the truth or prevent that honest relationship between contact tracers and the people?
Yeah, it's a good question because the very basis of contact, and we were quite aware of that, the very basis of successful contact tracing is that the community has confidence that they can make an approach, have conversations and not face any penalty or anything of that type. So it's a delicate balance. We have other options of getting the same information which we're looking at, and then we can use it, but it's information we have anyway. So we are using it for the purpose of driving the focus on the investigation, but also to help with the contact tracing. So it is a balance. It is difficult.
Because if this person didn't have COVID and they weren't found by contact tracers, the criminal activity that they were doing never would have, if there is any, would have never come to the surface anyway.
Well, that's if there is criminal activity. That's what we're looking at. So we won't know until we look further. But I take you're right. There are competing interests here, which will be a matter for a court in time.
So the Peppers CCTV, is that purely about the pizza bar connection, or is that also helping out Professor Spurrier and others trying to work out the original source of this whole outbreak and the cleaner of the two staff?
So the CCTV has two purposes. It's mainly for contact tracing, but also provides opportunity to look at what happened in the hotel so far as any activity that might interest the criminal side. So it's a dual purpose. But more importantly, it's all over with health.
What are you doing to get to the bottom of, exactly what are you doing with the pizza bar? Have you ordered that they give you all of their records? Can you kind of break it down and tell us, what steps have been taken by this task force?
So that's part of the unfolding investigation, and in its broadest terms, first of all, we know that we need to speak further with people from and in the pizza bar. Some of those people are in quarantine, and so it's our responsibility to firstly make sure our approach to them is lawful, and so we're waiting for their legal representation to speak to us, and then we will talk to them. And from that process, we would ask that anything that might be subject to seizure is either put forward or offered or seized, if it's relevant. This already happened, for example, for the individual that's in quarantine, who's the focus of the investigation, where we have spoken to him, and he has provided devices, the computer, the phone, etc., under the seizure by general search warrant. So
you established so far that one person has lied. Have you already established with this big task force that 2 or 3 or 4 people have lied? How many have you since established?
that's part of the investigation. I've never said anyone lied. That's what I'm looking at to see if there is a lie. That's the point of it. So others have said this. I know it's convenient, but the reality is, I'm not saying it's wrong or right. My obligation is to factually present this to prosecutors, and that's my obligation. So I'll stay away from using some of those inflammatory terms and leave it to others.
Is the 36-year-old, is he at Peppers? Is that where he's been
I
quarantined?
can't hear you.
Is the 36-year-old at Peppers? Is that where he's been quarantined?
So where he is not something that I'm willing to disclose. It's no relevance to this conversation. So.
Is there anything in the CCTV to suggest any contact between workers and guests at Peppers at this stage, or is that what you're looking for?
So as you'd imagine, 400 hours shows everything that's happening. There's a lot of movement. It's a matter of now frame by frame working out what that means, identifying who's who. So it's an unfolding piece of work. The main thing was to get it into a format that's readable, which has taken some time, and now we work through it. So we're working through providing it to health, particularly in time sequencing, so they can access it and use it much more effectively.
What do
You
you
talk
have?
about potential criminal activity being carried out at Peppers. What are we talking? Why are you doing that?
So that's to see if any time in there the person who we're looking at may or may not have been there. That would link it might feed into our inquiry. There may be nothing. There may be nothing. That's why we're looking. That's the whole purpose of an investigation. I don't have the luxury of presupposing anything, and I would never do that. So we're really stepping back here. There's a lot of emotion and a lot of desire for something to happen, but it will be done carefully. It will be done clinically, and we'll put our case forward. And there may not be a case. Just the same, there may well be. That's the point of the investigation. And that's why I will keep you involved as much as I can, and why this is particularly unusual.
Putting aside the crime though, if there is no crime that's been committed, and I know that Grant Stevens said before that there wasn't really any mechanism in the current laws to penalise the man for lying to contact traces. Have you looked into that, whether there are any legislative levers that you could pull if he hasn't committed a crime? In terms of penalising for misleading or lying to contact traces?
So, I might simplify that. If there is any offence under any act of which the elements are lying or omitting advice or providing false advice, it will be looked at. And that suite can go from the criminal law, the Emergency Management Act, the public health genre, and the elements of each offence. It is not as simple as you lied, you're in trouble. It is not as simple as that, and you won't get that answer straight away just like that, because it's unfair. And the whole purpose of the police investigation is to be fair. So we'll get there. Have no doubt about that. We will have an answer and it'll be clear. And it won't be for want of not looking at every aspect that we need to look at and that you expect us to look at. And I'm quite sure that that's not far off the ball.
We know
Final
the
question, please.
we know the 36-year-old worked at Stanford. You haven't mentioned Stanford today in terms of looking for CCTV. So why are you looking at Peppers? And do you suspect he was there? And why do you suspect that?
Well, we're doing that because that's what the investigators are looking at the moment. We may look further. So thank you for that advice about Stanford. We might look there as well, but we're looking at it.
Is there a suspected drug link at all to any of this?
I make no comment about drug links or anything. I'm aware on social media that this comment's been made. I'm aware that there's a thirst for someone to talk about drug links. It's not something that I'm going to comment on. I have to deal in facts, not the rumour and innuendo. So I don't have that luxury.
But you're not able to tell us why exactly you are looking at Peppers then?
I can't hear you, no.
You're not able to then exactly tell us why you are looking at Peppers then? 400 hours, it's a lot of hours to be looking at a place when he wasn't even working there.
Well, he may have been there. You don't know that. That's the point of looking at it. So
you've not established whether he's...
that's what we're looking at. That's the point of 400 hours of video. You can imagine it's a daunting task. We'll look at every frame. We'll get there.
Okay, thanks, Assistant Commissioner.
Thanks.